Okay, nobody's recording. Okay, nobody's recording. Okay, nobody's recording. All right. Welcome. Welcome today. I'm very glad to have you as part of this class. We're doing a recording of it because we had some errors in the first session. So this is a recording of the session, Architects of the Future, Session 1. My name is Peter Johnson, and I'm thrilled to be your guide today for this. A lot of you have spoken to me before. Some of us haven't met yet. We'll all be doing an onboarding session at some point to get to know each other in more detail. But as you may recall from my background, I'm a former diplomat. I've also worked in finance. I've worked in international development. I've worked in tech entrepreneurship. And these skills all came together in the area of strategic foresight. And I've been guiding organizations in this space for a few years now, drawing on about 20 years of overall work experience. And I hope the tools we bring you today are going to be helpful to you. Again, I'm passionate about this not just as an academic exercise, but a practical survival skill for all leaders. It's an uncertain world. And we're going to explore how these future trends, or rather these future looking skills, will help you spot the signals of change before they become obvious trends. How to build that kind of anticipatory thinking that separates thriving organizations from those that get blindsided by change. So, first, we're going to talk about why foresight matters. So, let me slide us over to that slide. Oh, actually, we don't need that slide yet. Why foresight matters more than ever now. We're looking at some of the powerful examples of organizations that got it right and others that missed those critical signals. We'll examine what I call the shadow rules as well. These are the hidden systems that shape our world in ways we don't often see coming. We're going to go in detail on those shadow rules in session 2. We'll just touch on them today. Then I'll introduce you to the SHIFT method, a practical framework for strategic foresight that you can start using immediately. And we'll dive deep into signal mapping and the STEEPLE framework for systematic horizon scanning. And then we'll go into scenario building, and I'm going to give you the fundamentals of scenario building and a preview or introduction to flipped futures, a creative technique that helps us go into more detail and as another way of imagining the future in scenarios aside from what we'll do with the signal scanning. And finally, we'll talk about the personal application of this, how you can start building your own foresight practice to use in your own business and your own professional life. So, to round this out, today, by the end of the session, you'll be able to define strategic foresight, understand why it's critical for modern leadership. You'll be able to identify weak signals using systemic scanning techniques, to apply the STEEPLE framework, as well as the SHIFT framework for holistic analysis, to build basic scenarios from identified signals, and to recognize the shadow rules and hidden systems that drive change. And the last one, the shadow rules, we'll just touch upon that today. We won't go into as much detail. So, are you ready to become a signal detective? Let's dive in. So, if we're talking about why foresight, and the biggest thing to look at is who are the winners and losers of this? Why are we here? Why is it so critical? The simple answer is that we live in a world where the future arrives faster than ever, and it rarely looks like what we expected. The pace of change is accelerated. I'm not going to have a crystal ball. I'm not going to tell you exactly what's happening. But with foresight, I'm going to help you think about what is possible. What are the options that could be coming? Again, it's not forecasting. Forecasting would be saying exactly what's coming. We're not doing that. We don't have a crystal ball. But we're looking at the range of possibilities, thinking of a whole stack full of what ifs. Because the more what ifs we prepare for, the more resilient and ready we'll be when that change comes. So, examples, you see a few of them here that I've put on the screen of foresight winners and losers. You see, first off, Shell. This is a very old one, I know, the early 1970s, but they were one of the first companies to really start using foresight. Well, most oil companies were focused on forecasting prices, forecasting production levels. Shell did something completely different, something radical. They were the creators of scenarios. They had detailed stories about different possible futures. One scenario explored what would happen if oil producing nations all suddenly restricted supply to pressure Western governments. And indeed, that's what happened. Again, most executives dismissed this as far fetched, and Shell wasn't saying this is going to happen, but they were saying that's a possibility. It's something that could happen. And they get ready for that as well as various other scenarios. And so they stress tested all their strategies against this and all the various other what ifs they thought about. So they'd be ready for what happened. They had contingency plans. They thrived while their competitors scrambled. Yeah, it's a different story. Kodak. If we look at Kodak in 1975, that's when already in 75, a Kodak engineer named Steve Sasson invented the first digital camera. Imagine that. In the 70s, there was a digital camera. The company saw the signal. They knew digital was coming, but they made a fatal choice. They decided to ignore it. Why? Because digital photography threatened their incredibly profitable film business. They had the signal, but they lacked the foresight to act on it. And by 2012, they went bankrupt. That's the cost of seeing the future but not preparing for it. That one hits really close to home for me because my hometown is Rochester, New York. That's where Kodak comes from and where Kodak still is based. When I was a kid, Kodak employed about 60,000 employees directly, plus tens of thousands of others at suppliers. Now Kodak employs about 3,000 people in Rochester. So that lack of foresight is something that made a real impact on me growing up. Yeah, there's more complex examples as well. But just to scan through what the rest of these on this page are, we've got Tesla. Yeah, Tesla in the 2010s saw that convergence of tech and climate concern and software, and they led to dominating the EV market. Zoom was ready when COVID hit. They were thinking, what would it be like if remote work really were to come? What would people need? They were positioned and ready. They had 30 times growth during COVID. NVIDIA, they pivoted from just gaming to AI chips. They saw the trends that were coming and they became $1 trillion company. Beyond Kodak, other failures, Blockbuster, they dismissed Netflix. They dismissed the idea of a streaming model. They kept with the actual DVDs to go in the mail. Netflix had the DVDs in the mail too, but Blockbuster did not transition. And I think a lot of people don't even know what Blockbuster is today. Nokia in the 2010s, they missed the smartphone revolution despite early smartphone dominance. And and WeWork, they ignored the signals of overvaluation and governance issues, and they simply collapsed. The key insight, it's not about predicting the future. It's about preparing for multiple futures.
Dogs in, bad dog, bad football. Dogs in.
Okay, so as we continue, as I was saying, there's a more complex example too of how we look at the future. This more complex example is when we're talking about the shadow rules. The shadow rules, this is something that where there's rules that nobody who's elected has created, but they impact all of us. Again, next session we'll go into more detail on this, but I want to touch on a quick example because it's relevant for today. One of these is algorithms, like Facebook's algorithm. It's a pretty simple example. Everyone knows something about this. But in the mid 2010, Facebook's algorithm was designed with a simple goal: maximize user engagement, keep people on the platform longer. The rule seemed innocent, right? Show users content that gets the strongest reactions. But in Myanmar, this shadow rule had devastating consequences. The algorithm began amplifying inflammatory posts about the Rohingya Muslim minority because they generate intense engagement. Likes, shares, angry reactions. What started as engagement optimization became a violence optimization or amplification system. Facebook's own internal research later showed that their algorithms proactively amplified hate speech that contributed to ethnic cleansing that displaced over 700,000 people. The engineers who built the algorithm never intended to fuel genocide, but they create a shadow rule, an invisible system that operated according to its own logic with consequences nobody anticipated. Here's the crucial foresight lesson. Weak signals are something that's there. This weak signals are something that will impact us and our consciousness. So this is something that we need to consider. Oh, well done. Dog, you're pissing me off. You're a bad dog. I don't like you. I'll do this again.